And a very good day. How are you, ladies and gentlemen? Great. I get to put on the other hat today. I get to talk about what I really like. Now, we're talking to you about the Amazon. I've had the pleasure going into the Amazon since the mid-'80s. Back on a ship you might have heard of years ago with Sunline Stella Solaris. I was deputy cruise director, then cruise director, and I was very fortunate for the lectures I had on board. We had Jean-Michel Cousteau, and then a gentleman, Captain Lauren McIntyre. Captain Lauren McIntyre is credited with discovering the source of the Amazon. It's called Laguna McIntyre up in the Andes. And I was able to go with them ashore. I was able to do many things. I fell in love with this region. I'm still in love with it. And also I learned some very interesting things. One thing Jean-Michel Cousteau taught me, and it's really stuck in my heart, you have to learn to love Mother Nature. For it's in the aspect of humankind that we protect what we love. So if you fall in love with it, you will care about it, you will protect it. And Captain McIntyre taught me a lot about the people, the flora, the fauna, the cities, and also man's impact. So without further ado, I'm going to go through and start showing you about the Amazon. Now, one thing, if you go to the Amazon or anywhere in the tropics in Central South America, be very careful about packing. For what happens, the dirt is mostly red clay. It's a very thin soil. After that is the red clay becomes mud. You track that on your shoes and you pack that, it becomes a red dust. You will stain everything in your suitcase with that color. Your tighty-whities won't be white anymore. So make sure you always do wash off your shoes before ever putting them in a suitcase, and I tell you that from personal experience. Now also, ladies and gentlemen, going back here, you're looking at Pangea. This, you're looking back about 200 to 250 million years ago. This is when the continents were joined together. You had the continents we call now South America, and also the area of Africa joined together. There was one long river at that time, and that flowed from the way of to the Pacific. So what happens is, as you did have the continents start to shift, you did have here the Andes starting to form. As the continents, the plates buckled, it formed the mountains. This broke apart the river. You have the Niger River in Africa, and now the Amazon in South America. But the Amazon, due to the Andes coming up, could not flow to the Pacific anymore. So it reversed the course of the river. It flowed into the Atlantic. That's the area there. Now you have here the aspect also, you do have here that you have to look at the aspect of what went through Panama Canal, that area. That isthmus only formed very short period of time ago. You're looking about a few million years only. So the Amazon region really, really grew and was uninterrupted. So you had very interesting, different flora and fauna going on in that area. Now, very interesting, it is a lost conquistador, a Spanish conquistador who is credited with actually discovering the Amazon. He gave the name, well, he helped give the name to the longest river and rainforest on the earth. In 1540s, what happened, Orellana, he returned to Europe with an account of a vast river and also attacks by hostile Indians. Some of these, he said, were led by a band of women warriors. They attacked his landing parties with poison arrows. They hid behind trees. Now, when they came back, the Europeans, upon hearing this, they thought these women warriors were the last remaining members of a mythical tribe, and that was their queen was actually slain, they say, by Achilles at Troy. Thus, they gave them name the Amazons. So that is where the name comes about. Now, the area that was attacked, Orleans attacked, is near what they call Patentines. Very interesting is now they do believe that these women that he thought attacked them were actually hairless men. Very, very thin, hairless men. But please, in Patentines, don't tell that to the local women. They love the story as it's originally going. Now, at any given time, the Amazon River contains at least 1/5 of the world's fresh water. You're located in the rainforest, 3.6 million square miles, containing the most complex and also largest river sanctuaries and areas in the entire world. There's over 51,000 square miles of navigable rivers in the Amazon. There's also 1,000 tributaries, several larger than the whole Mississippi River complex. The Amazon River contains more fresh water than the next 5 to 10 largest rivers combined. Now, this depends upon dry or wet season. When you talk about wet season, that normally begins about December. Over the last few years, it's been starting about October. This is when you have the heavy rains and the runoff from the Andes. So the river rises greatly. So at that time, during the wet season, you could take the next 10 largest rivers, put them together. It will not equal the water of the Amazon River. The daily flow during the average height of the river would supply the 5 boroughs of New York City for 10 years with all of its water's needs in one day alone. Now, the brown water of the Amazon as it flows out into the Atlantic can be seen for over 200 kilometers, 120 miles. One of the last times I crossed over, it's called the Baranote. This is the bar of sand that reaches out from the area. Was on the Pacific Princess, and we had an open bridge wing. We stopped the vessel, the captain, we lowered down a bucket. We pulled up the bucket, put in the spectrometer in it, and it was 100% fresh water. We were 64 kilometers, 40 miles from the coast of South America, and the water was 100% fresh flowing out from the Amazon. Now, about 0.8 of a kilometer or a half mile of coastline is added each year along from the sediment depositing along the area of the Atlantic coast. Now, by the time the Amazon reaches the Atlantic, the mouth of the river, it stretches over from north to south 320 kilometers, 200 miles. That surpasses the distance between London and Paris. And that's the area from Belém to the south and then the northern bank also. Now, depending on the route you will take, the city of Manaus is between 1,384 kilometers or 860 miles to 1,600 kilometers or 1,000 miles upriver. Now, you do have the Amazon basin. That is a forest. It covers over half of Brazil, and for that matter, 1/4 of all of South America. The total area of the Amazon is 9.3 million square kilometers, 3.6 million square miles. It extends from Brazil into the countries Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. You have 3 main types of forest. First is the floodplain zone. This is regularly flooded in the wet season. The Agapos, now the Agapos is occasionally flooded. The 2 areas I've just mentioned are where most of the cities are, where most of the people will go into when they visit. The last is a tierra firma. These are unflooded uplands that are unaffected by the rainy season. Now, many people will think of the Amazon as a steamy equatorial jungle full of water. To the contrary, it contains many mountainous regions in the Amazon. And for that matter, 25% of the Amazon region is actually dry savannas. They're never, ever really flooded, and they're actually prone to very dry drought periods. Now, only 5 to 10% of the Amazon is actually what's called the floodplain, and this is very well affected by the dry and wet seasons. Most of the cities, Manaus, Santarém, Belém, they are on the floodplains. Therefore, they are more threatened by the rising and fall of the water. Now, most of the cruise ships will cruise up the Amazon River during high water. Reason being, it does give them an extra amount, but you will see in my photos how many container ships go up the Amazon. Manaus contains a very large duty-free zone. They actually have Coca-Cola, they do computers, they do many electronics. Harley-Davidson has a plant in Manaus, so there's much shipping in and out of the area. Now, normally, as I mentioned, the river normally begins to rise in December. Over the last few years, it has started to rise much earlier in the beginning of October. Now, in the cruise terminal, if you ever get to Manaus, there's actually a marker that shows you how high the water has risen every year over the last about 50 years. There's one that has an arrow up where it actually went over the banks and actually flooded most of the city for a period of time. Now, the rise and fall of the water in the floodplain, it averages, in the average, 18 meters, 60 feet rise and fall of the water. That's a 5-story building. The area of the major cities of Manaus and Santarém, you're looking at a 10-meter rise or about 33 feet. Now, the Amazon, between the area of Manaus and Belém at the very mouth, coming up to the Rio Negro at Manaus, that is called the Amazon River. Once you pass that until you get into Peru, it is called the Solimões River. Once it gets by Iquitos area, it once again becomes the Amazon River. So there is different names of the river itself. Now, you're looking at the Amazon River itself, about 6,276 kilometers, which is 3,900 miles long. The Nile, 6,598 kilometers, or 4,100 miles. What happens, though, ladies and gentlemen, when you take into account in the Amazon from the flow at the start of Laguna McIntyre, and if you count that right till it comes to the Atlantic, you're looking at over 6,678 kilometers, 4,150 miles long. This means now most scientists are agreeing that the Amazon River is actually the longest river in the world. Now, most of the area in the Amazon, it's known, the area, quote, unquote, the civilized city areas, the peoples are known as Caboclas. The Caboclas, as you'll hear, is the normal people. Now, there's over 300,000 true Amazonian Indians, some who still have never been in contact with anybody, quote, unquote, from the civilized world. These people speak over 200 distinct dialects. Now, in this time and age, very fortunately, you need a special permit from the government to be able to go anywhere near these tribes. You might have just witnessed on the BBC, they had a great documentary. They just flew some drones up and they discovered many more tribes they didn't even know about in the area, but they did not go in personally. They actually just did it by drones. Now, there are about 15,000 species of animals within the Amazon itself. Now, about 80% of these species are nocturnal because of the heat and the humidity during the day. From 1999 to 2009, scientists discovered over 1,200 new species within the Amazon region. That's a rate of approximately 1 every 3 days. Now, this is about 627 plants, 257 fish, 216 amphibians, 55 reptiles, 16 different birds, 39 different mammals. Now, this total would be extremely much higher if they included the vast majority of invertebrates that were also discovered. Now, they do feel that once they have cataloged most of the things within the Amazon, it will account for about 30% of all the species of animals in the entire world. Now, scientists, they've studied a 1.29 square kilometer, or a half-mile square tract of land. This was a forest tract. They found in one half mile of square miles, they found 6,000 species of plants contained within this tract in just 1/2 square mile. There have been 3,000 species of fish so far discovered with the Amazon River and lakes. In the catfish, within the catfish alone, 500 different varieties contained in that one species. There are close to about 1,000 species of birds in the Amazon region. 1 out of every 5 known species of birds in the world is within the Amazon region. Anybody here with freshwater aquariums? This is the area where majority of freshwater aquarium fish are coming out from. Now, about 1/4 of the region of the Amazon has unfortunately been affected by man, 25% being destroyed over the last 60 years. You have cattle farming, that's responsible about 80% of the destruction. Soybean farming, also mining, felling a hardwood forest, also damming up for electricity really is giving a lot of problems to the area. Now, very interesting, no roads between the major cities. You can't drive from Santarém to Manaus. You can't drive from Belém to Santarém. It is an area that you go by boat. When you meet people and talk to people, you ask them where they live, they say, oh, I live 3 hours upriver, or I live 3 days upriver. They will tell you their distance by how long it takes them to go by boat. So that's how they explain the area. There's really no roads at all. Now, you have 2 different kinds of rivers. Up to the area north of the Amazon, they're called black rivers, and they have very heavy and tannic acid. This is where you'll find Manaus and a lot of the cities. Reason being, the tannic acid and the decay that's in the water doesn't breed the mosquitoes like the muddy water does. So you will find more of the cities on the area black. Then you have to the south, which Santarém is located, you have the clear or blue rivers. So you have 2 distinct different river areas. Interesting fact, there are no bridges anywhere that cross the Amazon River. Now, I'll give you a little information. We're talking about the meeting of the waters. The Amazon flows at a rate 7.4 kilometers an hour at 4.6 miles. The average temperature of the Amazon, 75 to 79 degrees or 24 to 26 degrees. The black and the clear waters, they flow at an average rate of 2.5 kilometers or 1.6 miles, and they're at a temperature of 86 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Celsius. Now, the Amazon is cooler because it's coming down from the Andes, so you have a cooler water. So therefore, you have density, you have temperature, and also speed. So when these waters come together, they don't mix right away. You can have a meeting of the water that goes on for miles, two very distinct colors as you go through. As I mentioned, the black rivers is the tannic acid and decay. And as I mentioned, you do have the clear waters also. Now here we are. This here is the mouth of the Amazon, the Delta, 200 miles. So once again, London to Paris. Now, if you notice, it isn't one river. It's basically, you think you're looking at land next to you, you're looking at islands. There's vast amount of islands. It's amazing during high water to see small islands floating by the ship. They're just carrying and the breaking apart. So what happens is, this is the reason high water, there is more areas for ship to move. Another one of these shots. Now you can see the brown water coming out. So once again, that can go out for 120 miles during the high water. This is what it looks like coming in. This was flying into Manaus one time. And you can see here all the different ways you can travel around, all different islands. This is how the ships snake about. Now, by the way, on a ship, you need to get off and explore if you go by vessel. Reason being is it is a thick green jungle. So you cannot see into the Amazon. It's basically like someone put walls up around the ship. You need to go in and explore. So here, this is Brazil. You see the surrounding areas. That's the Amazon. So look at how big. You're looking at 1/4 of South America, the entire area. Now, this is the late Captain Laura McIntyre, passed away in 2003. Once again, he with National Geographic. Also, I have it. I don't know what I did. A couple of photos I cannot find. His most famous photo was a photo cover of National Geographic back in the late 70s, mid-70s. You might have seen. That's the babies laying on top of the big water lilies. He was in the area outside of Manaus, in an area the women would go down to wash their clothes and wash themselves. They place the babies in the lilies themselves, and they just tend, and the babies sleep inside the lilies. So it's an excellent photo if you could ever look it up. That is Laguna McIntyre. That is up on the top of the Andes. Now, it's very interesting. It doesn't open up with a stream. It doesn't open up with a river. It doesn't open with anything that way. What it is cracks. So what happens is you have the lagoon, and then on the bottom, along the Andes, it cracks. And then you have the water draining out. That is the first drops of water that create the Amazon River. So here is the Amazon in Peru. This is up just above Iquitos. Now, how would you like to travel with that much freeboard? That's how you get around, folks. That's basically a water taxi. Now, it's very interesting. This changed. When I was first there, going in the 80s, you had that still being rowed. It was fascinating for me with the current that could run in some areas 3 knots to see these little old Indian women beating the tide. You have to row extremely hard. Now it's all done by motors. So here we are in Peru. That's the Explorer. That's the vessel, unfortunately, a few years ago just sank down in Antarctica. Luckily, nobody injured, nobody killed with her being sunk. Now, that is a first meeting of the waters. Now, you look, you're looking to the north, so you have the Black River, and then you have the brown of the Amazon. And you can see it's very distinct in its line. Now, this is Iquitos. This is a lovely area in Peru. Now, to get here, you have to go by boat or fly in. There are some roads that some heavy trucks can utilize, but other than that, if you're coming in anywhere from Peru, it's basically a flight or coming in by boat. This is the area where it turns from the area of the Amazon to the Solimões, remains the Solimões River till it gets to the Black River, which is the area of Manaus. Now here, very close, this is one little small area that is in Colombia. And it is very, very well protected. Any vessel stopped. Now this is the meeting of waters of Manaus. This is the Rio Negro. Now you can see the distinction there of the water. And that'll go on for miles. Now here in Santarém, now you can see a little bit lighter of the water. This is the blue, the clear water rivers. But once again, with the temperature, it is a warmer, and you have much more denser of the area of the Amazon River itself and much cooler. You have it where it just runs for a long time. Now here, boats of the Amazon. As I mentioned, no roads going through, so you'll see boats of every kind. This is how you get around. Now what happens is you don't travel with a fancy suitcase. You travel with a fancy hammock. Because as soon as you get on board, you take your hammock and you hang your hammock up. So your status is your hammock. So you'll see it that way. And there's hundreds of people that way. If you're traveling alone, folks, make sure you make friends with somebody, because what happens on these boats, when you fall asleep, everything you have gets legs. There's the new Queen Elizabeth III. So here, these are the ships going up and back from Manaus. So once again, 1,000 miles up the Amazon they travel. Here you have the locals coming out. This is an area called Boca de Valeria, I'll show you. Now this is the Macapa Pilot Station. This is where Sir Peter Blake unfortunately did meet his demise. What happens is he had taken over the Cousteau Society, and he was on a boat, and that was the former Cousteau Arctic Explorer. December in 2001, what happened, he came up the Amazon with a party. And what they did is they went up and they dropped off everybody up at the headwaters. They were going to his party explore through Venezuela and come out at the area of the Caribbean. He was with the rest of the boat party sailing out to go around. They got to the Macapa station. The pilot said, no, you can't get clear till tomorrow morning. So there's a thing called the water rats. And what happens, they knew they possibly could get robbed. They stayed, protected the boat. They came on, he shot one, and he was unfortunately shot and killed. What happens is New Zealand made a big protest. Basically, Brazil said, well, if he didn't shoot the guy first, nothing would have happened. Well, they brought it almost all the way to the UN, and within 3 days, they captured the water rats they were persecuted for killing Mr. Blake. So that's the pilot station. Another photo I don't have is one time we stopped here on the Stella Solaris, and we had a time for clearance, and I was able to go ashore, and they let me play football, some soccer with some local kids. It was absolutely phenomenal because you're at the equator. One goal was on one side, one goal was on the other side. And halftime, you change. So it was very interesting. So that is the pilot station when you come in. Now here, just life on the Amazon. You can see what I'm saying. You cannot see into the jungle. It is a wall of green, but you will see anywhere a little tributary, little path goes, you'll normally see a house. And now what happens, you'll see them raised up a little. Now many of these people will have a house further up and much higher. So when the water comes up, if it does flood their house, they just move. Very nonchalant. No one fights against nature. You just live with it. So you can see here almost anywhere you see a little tributary. Those are hospitals. They tow them into different villages. They're a hospital that way, and they take them all throughout the area. Now I'm going to take you a little flora and fauna. You have all your macaws. There's macaws everywhere. Now what happened, the kids have them as pets, but they don't cut their feathers. What happens is you raise them as young, feeding them. They'll disappear sometimes for a month or two, fly back, knowing they got a good, easy meal. Now here, that's a short-tailed green parrot. That's in Boca de Valeria. Your parakeets also. Now that's a Sig Zoo in Manaus. That's called a harpy eagle. That's the largest bird of prey in all of the Amazon. That's your black-collared hawk. Now toucans, it's very interesting. The colors of toucans, when someone says, oh, it's a blue toucan, what they're saying is the color of its feet. They don't go by the colors because the beaks are always different colors. Now, another unique thing about that, they're very sharp at the very, very front to cut into bananas and fruits and mangoes, but they don't have much strength. So it's very interesting. There was one that they had as a quote-unquote pet, and I went to go and pet it, and it kept snapping at me, and this little kid said, let it bite you. So I put my hand, it went, and then went, okay. It couldn't intimidate anymore, so it just said, okay. It was calm. But when it does its thing, because of the hollowness, when it snaps it closed, It's really loud. It seems like it's going to hurt you. But you see all the different colors, but they go by the color of the feet. There you have your terns, your little swallows. Now, these are a beautiful bird. This is a great Kissidy, and they are very, very easy to spot. They're not that scared of people. So they'll land on the cruise ships. They'll land on docks if you're standing there. They just take a look at you. Red-breasted blackbird. There's your black vulture, your yellow-head vulture, lesser yellow-head vulture. Your white, this is an area of the white egret. Now, the great egrets, that way you'll also see the white heron. The difference you can see is in the legs. The egret has a black leg. The greenish flesh color, yellow, that is the heron. So the difference you can see between them. That is a tiger heron. That neck is about a foot long, and it coils it up so it stands over the water, waits for a fish to go by, and gets the fish, and it spears right into the fish. That is the kingfisher. That's an Amazon kingfisher. That's your blue ring kingfisher. They're all throughout the area. That is the closest I've ever gotten to that bird. It's one of the rarest birds in the Amazon, a hotazin. Hotazins were almost completely made extinct by people coming in, haberdashers for feathers. They're the most beautiful feathers, and they wanted them for the hats years ago. So they were taken almost completely to extinction. Now, these are interesting birds. There's two different types. These are the yellow-rumped capasiki. They build their nests hanging down for safety. And then here, this you can see a little longer, a little thinner. That's the orapendula. The orapendula, and they live in these little nests hanging down. This is a little hummingbird. And then here, you'll see these all throughout. You saw we're coming into Lima. We had them all around us, the cormorants. Now, once again, the Chinese and many different Asians use these as fishing birds. What they do, they capture the birds. They put a metal band around its neck. You tie the band to the vessel. The bird sits at the back, sees a fish, goes down with a rope tied to it, comes up. With the metal band, it can't swallow. So you got a fish. At the end of the day, you feed it. Next day, you do the same thing over. So they use them as fishing birds. Now, here are your dolphins. Now, one interesting thing is the river dolphins in the Amazon. They're pink. They're beautiful dolphins. Another lecturer I had the pleasure of working with. Okay, where's my fisherman? This is a peacock bass. This is what people come down for. They're world records now. They are unbelievably tasty fish and one heck of a fighting fish. So you have people who come into the Amazon just for fishing on this fish alone. Now, this to me is one of the tastiest fish I've ever had. This is called the tambaqui. Tambaqui only eats fruits. Now, most of the fruits that do come in and seasonal come with high water. So the bottom of the trees are near the water. So you have the acai, you have mangoes, you have all these different things. They'll fall in. This fish eats it. It stores it as a fat. But what happens is it's a fat of fruit. So when you taste this meat, it's sweet. It's an absolutely phenomenal, it's called tambaqui. Now here, that's your red piranha. Now, let me tell you one thing. There has been no actual recorded case in any moving water. There has been areas when high water recedes, becomes a small lake, not enough fish that piranhas will attack. But there's been nothing ever recorded in a moving water of a piranha ever attacking and killing anybody. What happens is it's the crocodiles that bite you, and the piranhas come in and finish it up. But here is the one that is a little more ferocious. This is the black piranha. They taste just like tilapia, nothing. They taste like what you put on them. They really don't have a heavy flavor at all. Now, this is the one I showed you in the area of Peru, the acari. This is the one that has the teeth going around its body, and each one of its fins is a basic saw. So that is, what I'm holding in my hand there is the top fin. And then the teeth all the way around, and then on the side are two more just like that. So if you were to take that out of the water, because it's covered, so you take it out of the water and grab it, it would just shred your hand. But it is Done for a reason, because it's an extremely tasty fish, so it is its defense in that way. Now this here, piracu. Piracu is part of the catfish family. It's one of the largest fish in the Amazon. Here's one on land. Its scales are over an inch in diameter. They're used by the natives as fingernail files because they're rough. But also, if you see all those masks, see the white and brown covering around the mask? That is the scales of the piracu. So they're used in decorations also. And here we have the leafcutter ants. You'll see these even in the hearts of cities. It's amazing how they can carry. Okay, can you spot the spider? Yep, you'll see, unfortunately, all over. That was on a hike. Now that's Charlie. I'm going to show you where Charlie lives. He lives in an area called Boca de Valeria. He lives in a little restaurant area. He comes out about every hour or two, looks around, okay, and goes back in. Now this is your dart frog or your tree frog. This combined with the, I always mispronounce this, kiara. Kiara is also a sap of a tree, poisonous. You combine the back of this, when you squeeze it, a poison comes out, and that's to stop any animal from eating it. You combine that poison with the kiara, and you have a very, very good numbing agent. And they can take that, they'll take it with a little dart. It's actually a needle of a type of palm tree, and it's very long. You take a blowgun, you rub that on the back of the frog, you rub it on the tree, you get a monkey or a sloth in a tree, 3 or 4, wait 5 minutes, down it will fall. So here they are getting the poison out. That is the kiara coming out of the tree. So that's the two mixtures together. Now here you do have here, that's a tree boa. There you have rainbow boa. And here, caterpillars. Now this one here, I am getting the photo and my guide is laughing. And I have no idea why. And I look down and there's a couple on my sock. I have never felt a more painful bite. And that's why he was laughing, because I didn't knock him off. They have a bite that's like an electric shock. It makes a bee sting tickle. So they're very cute, but you do not want them on you. Now here, this is a river otter. And then here you have your sloths. Now most of the children in the villages have the sloth. They literally hang around their neck all day sleeping. And once again, the diamond on the back signifies a male. Once again, this is early 80s, a little later. Now, can anybody tell me what that is? For the Amazonian Indians, this is one of their delicacies. It's a mud turtle. A little more of a shot of a shell. Now, this is the one I was pointing out from the area of the bridge when we went through the Panama Canal. That's a capybara, the largest rodent in the world. It's rat family, up to 70 pounds. They're being raised now. It is a very big industry in the Amazon for their fur and also raising for meat. So you do have those. They're very interesting as you go through. That is the agouti. That is part of the guinea pig family. In the areas of Tobago and other areas, it is called bushmeat. It was a very big protein on Devil's Island also at that time. That's a teper. That's the sigzu also. And then you have your monkeys. That is a woolly monkey. Here's your spider monkeys. They're very, very cute. Now this here is the red-faced ukari. The locals call them the tourist monkey. They're always red and peeling. And that's your white face. That is a tamarin. They're very, very cute. The capuchin. Had a couple I made friends with. And then here, that is my favorite of all, the squirrel monkeys. They're very, very inquisitive. They'll literally follow you around sometimes. Now that one comes down, it's hard to see in the photo, but I had a piece of banana. She watched me for a while. She had a baby on her back. And she came down and actually took the banana right from me. Now these are marmosets. These are the smallest of the monkeys. That one there had that watch off my hand in about 2 seconds. Luckily, I grabbed it before he pulled it through the cage. So they are very, very quick. Now here, just go through a little bit. This is a freshwater sawfish, some of the bugs and some of the sea animals. Now here's more of your spiders, your moths and butterflies. Now that is a mosquito. That is bigger than my hand. So that's actually taken on the ship. If you're on a cruise and you have a balcony cabin, do not leave your balcony door open at night. You have all different critters attracted by the light. That's a moth. That's the cruise card, folks. We had hundreds of those on the ship coming in at night. You literally can sometimes go out at night and it sounds like an electric wire is overhead. It's the buzz of the bugs. They come in because of the lights. And they hear, this is very interesting. This was one time where we had dragonflies literally cover the entire ship. It was mating season. They came in, taking that photo. I had 3 get in my shirt. That's how many were around. The next day, carcasses covering the entire deck area. Now, these are the sunsets. There's a little caiman. What happens on the Amazon, you do not normally get a pink or a red glow. You get marigold sunsets. You get these beautiful gold. They're absolutely phenomenal. Here's one of the caimans. It's very interesting when you're holding something that looks at you and goes, lunch. Now here, that's a tree boa. I'm a tree iguana, I'm sorry. Very interesting. You'll find them near the epee trees, yellow or purple epee. They love the flowers. So if you see the flowers, and I'll show you those in a moment, you'll see the iguanas normally all around. Now here you do have your jaguar. Now this is not the most dangerous animal. That is the most dangerous animal. It's called the Picati pig. They hunt in packs. They're very small, razor-sharp teeth. And what they do when they hunt, they go around an animal and they keep running in circles and trying to bite on the haunches. So they'll run and they'll bite. 3 or 4 bites, the animal, a person will fall. The whole group will attack. So the people are more scared of the Picati pig than they are the aspect of the jaguars or also the panthers. But the great thing about them, they stink so bad you can tell when they're around. So here you do have your panther. Now here you're looking at the chocolate cacao. When it's yellow, it is ripe, and there is a very beautiful fruit inside besides the seeds of the chocolate. So there you do see them. They are ripe for picking. And it really is a very sweet, sweet fruit. Now that's the cashew. The cashew nut is on the bottom. You see the curl that way? That's the nut. The fruit, a very stringent fruit. Very, very, very great, but very heavy perfume smell. If you were to take a bunch of those, put them in your cabin or put them on your living room, and you leave them for a day, your whole house will smell like that fruit, and it smells like a perfume. So it's beautiful in the beginning. But if you ever sit next to someone with a very strong perfume after a couple hours, it overwhelms. So that overwhelms that way. They also make the caipirinha with that. Very, very interesting cashew caipirinha. Now that is cupuaçu. It looks like a kiwi on steroids. And what it is, it's part of the cacao family, part of the chocolate family. But the pulp of that tastes like an unsweetened pina colada. It's an absolute taste that is one of a kind. Absolutely enjoy it. Now these are palm fruits. What they do in the Amazon is they take these, they boil them in salted water for hours. And then they serve them just as you would squash or pumpkin. And they're very, very tasty. Now, these are the Victoria water lilies. This is the one that Captain Lauren McIntyre had on the National Geographic. Now, what happens is the reason they're not eaten is on the bottom, and I'll show you a little bit later. They have spikes coming down into the water. So fish coming up can't bite into the leaf. So they can't get attacked in that way. But there's the flower itself. Now, that is called the lipstick plant, anato. Now, when it's unripe, it's yellow, and they do a gold dye out of it or red dye. And this was originally the main coloring aspect for lipsticks, was this plant here. So you can see here the children, how they use it That way also for painting. There you do have here your hibiscus. That's called a red parrot plant. That's your orange peacock. How many like orchids? If you do a jungle hike, you'll find them hanging from trees all over the place. You can see right on the trees in the wild. And that's a flamboyant or flame tree. And that's the epee. That's the one I told you, the tree iguanas. They really enjoy the flower. There's yellow and there's purple. There's one there enjoying lunch. So that's your purple. Now that's your water hyacinths. You'll see huge patches of these being ripped from the sides on high water and floating right down the Amazon. Now, how many here have heard the craze, the acai? These are the acai plants. They grow in this tall palm. And what happens, as mentioned, most of them fruit during the high water. So what they do, they put nets underneath to collect them. So that is the berries right there, the acai berries. Now that is the the Brazil nut. So they come in these pods, and they're very dangerous to be underneath. There's about 15 or 16 nuts in a heavy pod. So you open them up, there's the Brazil nuts. Now, interesting, they'll burn them sometimes as a little torch. When they're fresh, there's so much oil in them, you can put them on a nail or something that way, light it, and it will burn for about 10, 15 minutes. There's so much oil inside the nut itself. There's your pineapple. Now that is the passion fruit. That is how it flowers. Now those are the size of oranges. They grow unbelievably large in the Amazon. Now one thing I forgot to mention in Peru to try, how many here, I know many of the Australians have passion fruit. How many here have passion fruit or like passion fruit? In Peru, what they do a very simple, decadent dessert. You cut open the top, you pour in about 1 ounce to 2 ounces of sweetened condensed milk, stir it up, and you drink it. Absolutely phenomenal to try. That is your star apple, also called star fruit. Bananas, you'll find all types of bananas, all different types. They have one they call an ice cream banana, vanilla banana. That's your calabash. Those are your guavas, absolutely phenomenal in this area. That is the water apple. It's also called the Malay water apple. Budding, and there's the apple itself. Now that is a mango tree. They are very large here. Yeah. They're all different types here. Now that's guarana. Guarana is utilized as a basically caffeine base. You have all these different weight loss supplements using it. They also utilize it in Brazil in their soft drink. There's a soft drink called guarana, and it is a stimulant type soft drink. And that's the fruit itself. That's called camu, a very sour but yet finishing off bitter fruit. There you have your watermelons. And this is what started the whole big craze in the Amazon. This is your rubber. This is your rubber trees, your seeds that come out. This is what made the big boom in the area. So here, this is in an area outside of Manaus. I happen to be taken into. It was very interesting, shown how the rubber. What happens, you see he's wearing a torch. When they hand harvested the rubber years ago, it was too hot in midday. So they started about 4 in the morning, and you worked till about 10 in the morning. So you had a torch on your head so you could see how to tap the trees. Now here, you've heard of vulcanized rubber. Well, the Vulcan is that volcano you see. You take damp twigs, leaves, and it smokes. So when the fire is smoking, you take the rubber, pour it on a stick, and it makes it clot together stronger. It vulcanizes it. So here we are, and this is how it was shipped, the rubber. It was shipped in these balls. So I'm trying my hand at it. Now this is Santarém, Saint Irene. This is an area up in the Amazon. It's known as the Pearl of the Tapajos. Their clear water, blue water river there is called the Tapajos River. It is, to me, very interesting. Two very diverse cultures actually came together here. One, you had slaves. When they wanted to flee, some fled to this area. They were given a tract of land. But then what very interesting happened, You had the Confederates of the United States. When they lost, a lot of those were told you could plant cotton. So they came down. So you had both sides of the rivers. You had the people who flew away as slaves, those who flew away as Confederates living right across from each other. Unfortunately, you could not grow cotton in this area. So many of them, of the Confederates, they came down. They died from malaria, yellow fever. But they did move into one other aspect. They started sugar production. So you had the Confederates of the United States very big in starting the sugar production in the area. Now here, this is how you get around, once again, by boats. There's no roads outside of Santarém, so everybody comes in and out by boat. You have here people living on their boats. They'll do their fishing, commuting. That's your gas station. So the gas station on the water. But interesting, you notice they all have the aspect of the boats have their cooking. So you have in the back, you can pick up your gas canister for your cooking, and then gas for your boat also. And then here, this is just the decorations in town. What I love what we've been doing over the last couple of years is they're taking the old style buildings and they're building new buildings, but they're building it in the old style. They're keeping the tiles. They're keeping it very, very interesting in that way. Now, one other thing I forgot to mention about Santarém, it's also where the rubber boom collapsed. Back in 1874, there was a Britishman by the name of Henry Wickham. He came into Santarém. He said he was a haberdasher, and he wanted to collect feathers, and he wanted to collect crocodile skins. Unbeknown, he was there on behalf of the British government, and at that time, I forget the name, it's now called Kew Gardens. He was there to collect rubber seeds. Rubber, when it grows in the Amazon, it has many natural enemies, so the trees can't grow next to each other. They grow at a distance apart. But what he did is he smuggled 10,000 rubber seeds out inside the area of feathers under them and also inside the skins. He got them over the Kew Gardens. They propagated some there. They brought them over to the area of Singapore, the Botanical Gardens of Singapore, got them flourishing there and moved them to the areas of the British plantations in Malaysia. What happens is in Malaysia, the seeds were brought over. They weren't brought over with any of the bugs, any of the diseases. So therefore, they could grow them right next to each other. So it crippled, destroyed the aspect of the rubber plantations in Brazil in only a few years. Now, you did have, that way, the British plantations in Asia, I have one fact, 4 tons of rubber in 1900. By 1914, 71,000 tons. So it wiped out. The Amazon, especially Manaus, this was the area known lighting cigars with $100 bills. They had the whole rubber production to themselves. They had the monopoly, and that was taken completely away. Now, by the way, this is a taxi. They utilize motorcycles as taxis. So you have your taxi. So if you're with a group of 10, it can take a while to get anywhere. Now this here, this is cassava. This is also what you make tapioca out of. Very interesting fact, this is poisonous. If you would eat it raw, you'd be very, very sick. You could actually die. But once you grate it, drain it, and then roast it, it becomes the main staple. You have many people who live in the Amazon. They live by growing and trading. So you have co-ops everywhere. So this is one of the co-ops of the cassava. So here, the machine run by hand, grinding up the cassava. There's the wheel. They're squeezing the water out of it. This is how they make tapioca also. Grating it up. And then roasting it. They use it for bread. They use it for toppings. They use it for all different factors. It is the main starch. Here's tapping the rubber tree. Now, a rubber tree can be tapped more than once. So you'll see and hear the normal different scars all over. I love that little kid's face like, wow, really? So you can see here collecting the rubber. Now here, this is the Tapajos River, the meeting of the Blue River with the Amazon itself. Now this is also the area that Henry Ford came down to. And he built a town called Fordlandia. And unfortunately, the gentleman who sold him the land was also the person who did the fake, quote-unquote, survey. It was too high up river, to when the river went down, you couldn't transport. The land was not anywhere perfect for growing rubber. And Ford, he lost altogether, and we have it here. He sold the land back to Brazil in 1945 for $250,000. 1945, he reinvested $20 million. One of the largest losses of the Ford company. Now this here shows you, I told you about the rise and fall of the river. So you can see this in the low water would be completely dry. Now what happens is cattle, they use water buffalo because of the water. So that way here, they tried regular cattle. They do not survive when the water rising. One thing about this area is the ice cream. It is buffalo milk ice cream. Absolutely different texture, extremely rich. So here, you can see this house. That's prepared for high water. So what happens is this is about mid-water at this time. So they know the water is going to rise, so they build their house upwards. A little bit later on in the year, you can see. You'll see him fishing. Now what happens is, I told you, raising in the rubber. You would work from 4 in the morning till 10. You take a break, eat, and then you go out and you'd fish. You go out, maybe do your farming for cassava or something that way. So they would have 2 different ways, but you did it very nonchalant. But you'll see him fishing all throughout the area. Now here, seeing nature, that's a sloth right up in the tree. Now, what's wrong with that picture? No electricity, a satellite dish. What happens is, I mentioned in Manaus, you have the duty-free area. They make electronics. This is probably now 8 or 9 years old, that photo. They have had a TV larger than the one I have in my house, flat screen. So it's so interesting going by, and they're running on a diesel generator, and their TV is half the size of the interior of the house. Now that's a little piranha. Now here, this is in the hardwoods. That is one of the banyan trees. Look at the size of that. Playing on the vines. Now here, you have some of the vines, you can get over a pint of water out of a vine. I was on here, this was part of what they call jungle survival. Now here, these are termites. Now they taste like pepper. They utilize them as a protein. And I've tried eating them. They actually do taste like a grain of pepper, and they're utilized that way. Now here, they'll go up, they'll tap different trees, show you different barks, different things they use for stomach ailments, all different factors. Now here, that's the tree I told you about what they use for the darts. You have them coming out, and there's a fruit on there, and that protects the fruit. So here, they can take that dart, combine it with the frog, combine it with the carriera, and you have the poison. There's the blowgun. That's one of the sure excursion agents, and she hit the target twice in the center. I'd never argue with her. That is a coconut worm. It sounds disgusting, but it was actually one of the best tasting. What happens is there's small little coconuts. They don't grow any bigger than that. And what happens, the Brazilian firefly, when it's first budding, puts its eggs into it. And as it grows, the larva eats the coconut inside. So the jungle training, they teach you to find these, open them up, and they use it like butter. So when you're frying up different greens or something that way, you crush that, and it gives it a sweet, and it also gives you protein. So it's a coconut worm. Now here, this is a sunset in Santarém. Shows you the different colors. That's the old ocean princess. So you can see you don't get the bright reds, but you do get beauty. Now, Boca de Valeria, this is a very interesting area. A lot of folklores in this area, but how it really came about is very interesting. It was a ship that I worked on, Stella Solaris, well before I was on it, late 70s, doing an Amazon run. Mrs. K and her son, the owners, were on board, and they were traveling to area of Manaus. The current was a lot less than they had predicted. So the pilot said, if we continue, we're going to be 8 hours early. So we're going to get in the middle of the night. So they turned around and said, well, is there any way we can stop? He says, I know a woman who lives in a little village. We could tender into there. So they went in. That's Boca de Valeria, the mouth of Valeria's River. So they started going in, and cruise ships have been going in here ever since. When the cruise ships come in, all the surrounding villages come together. So it's very interesting. So I'm going to show you here the water. That is low water. Coming in a little, about 2 weeks later. A little later coming in. So you can see the raising of the water. So these people live with this. It's a normal way of life. So there it is, end of December, mid-March. And that is the rising of the water. It makes it very interesting trying to make tender platforms. So here, this is all the people coming in. I love it. That church has been being built for about 15 years. They keep taking donations. They're making a fortune on it. But you can see here all the homes raised up for when water does come up. All the children coming in from different villages. People living part-time have hammocks underneath their house to get out of the heat. You can see, I'll show you in a moment, the interior there. That's the little area where this one woman prepares soda, beers, and everything that way. There's a little home. That is high water. So I'm going to go back here. See the yellow? The water came all the way up above that for high water. That's your bathrooms. They do have a private one, though. And then here, that's Charlie. That's the one I showed you, the tarantula. He lives there, and he just comes out every once in a while, takes a look around, makes sure everybody's happy. There's music blasting, people laughing. Doesn't faze him in the least. Now, and here are the children with all their different animals. This is a very interesting one. This, when taken, was the monkey was about, the capuchin was about 8 years old. They get very ornery after about a year. They normally are let go. This one still thought he was a baby. He was the most docile. He would jump on your shoulder. You could just, that way, and normally they get very ornery as they get older. The little kids playing with their crocodiles. Now, Parintines, this to me is one of the more interesting places. Every June, they have the Boy Bumba. The Boy Bumba is a folkloric tale, very interesting, but they also have some very interesting superstitions. In Parintines, women will not go in the water alone because they're afraid of the dolphins. There is a thing that says, a fairy tale, folklore, that the dolphins will become men, and they have their way with women. So when a young girl gets pregnant, she turns around and says, "Oh, no, Mom, it was the dolphins." So you have that way, but literally the women, they will not go in the water alone because of this and that way. There's also, they have their own Loch Ness here. They have the fire snake, a giant fire snake that eats fishing boats or can burn down a fishing boat. But the one I find the most interesting is the Boy Bumba. It is very interesting. The costume makers are utilized also in the area of Rio de Janeiro for Carnaval. You have all together here some fantastic costumes. It is the blue against red. So what happens is there were two different bulls. There is a story about a young lady, and they were slaves. And what happens is she was pregnant. She was dying for ox tongue. She got her husband to go and get her ox tongue. Well, he killed the owner's best ox. He was found guilty. He was sentenced to death. And what happens, she goes to the witch doctor, Paget, and explains, Paget brings the bull back to life, and everybody lives happily ever after. Well, what happens when one of the first rubber barons heard about this, he said, I will build if I make my money, I'll build a bull worthy. And then what he did is he built this huge bull, wooden blue bull, and he took it around the town. Well, another baron, he turned red baron, he said, I'm going to build one. He built a red. And what he did is he went around singing songs, how great his was, one, but how bad the other one was. It became a rivalry. Then they started doing it in the churchyard. Then the town started taking sides. The sides are blue and red. Houses are painted either blue or red. Piping for the house is either blue or red. Street signs are blue or red. Political signs, blue and red. So it's really very interesting. Now they have a stadium, the Bombadrome. The Bombadrome takes place in June, and I'll show you here. This is coming in. Once again, no roads. So you have tens of thousands of people come here in June. There's only a small amount of hotels. The boats come in. You live on your boats. So you have hundreds. Now, this is normal. This is not during June. There would be 10 times as many boats in June. So here, that is the Red Bull. That is the blue. You see the blue star. So you have the two different bulls. Now, red versus blue. Red street signs. Red houses. You have here Coca-Cola makes a blue can because nobody on the blue would drink out of a red can. Taxis, now they've gotten smart. Now they painted one side red, one side blue. Your beer signs in red and blue. Here's the other side of town. They're the blue. So it's red against blue. There's your blue taxis. So here's somebody trying to play both sides. This is the area of the practice field. A blue Coca-Cola can. Political signs. Now I love this. The piping for your house. You want it red piping or blue piping? Now this is the Bombodrome. It's shaped like a bull. You have the blue and the red. Now these teams compete. Whilst the other team's on, you have to be silent. You can't heckle. But you're looking at unbelievable amount of people. There's drummers. There's all different musicians. You have everything. Now the covered part you see is where the judges sit. Now what's very interesting is the judges will cast their ballots. They will not announce the winner until they are safe and sound at home. I'm not kidding you. And they don't come from this area. They bring them in from far away. But they will not announce until they're gone. Each side, 3,500 people participating in each side. So there is the head of the bull. Now here, this is around the stadium. That's what I told you about with the Dolphins. Becoming men at night. Now here, this is the practice. Now the uniforms, costumes are never utilized twice. They're taken apart, maybe rebuilt into something different. But they will not utilize them twice. So you can see the Red Bull, Coranchito. There's the bull itself. That's that river snake I told you about, the fire snake. Then you have the harpy eagle come down, take care of the snake. Now, Manaus, this is where the rubber started. This was the big area. It's unbelievable city. You're looking at, to me, fascinating. The docks still going since 1902. They're built by the British for the rubber, still going on. You do have here, you're on the Rio Negro. Here's the old area coming through, the old custom house. They have there, that's the beautiful opera house. I'll show you that in a moment. But here's the duty-free zone. So this is 1,000 miles up, Nokia, Harley Davidson, and here's the city itself. You're looking at about 1 million people. Manaus, by the way, means the mother of gods. You have here, between 1890 and 1910, rated as probably the most richest city in the entire world due to the rubber. Now here, you have here the old customs house, the docks itself. It's a fascinating city going through. This is their, very interesting, their little clock. This is their miniature Big Ben. And what's very interesting, there's a watch repair place inside. Now this is the Amazon Opera House. This, to me, inaugurated back in December 31st, and it was 1896. What happens is one of the top European operas was going through, and the diva said, I won't play Manaus. They don't have a place worthy. So they built this. Now, this took 20 years to build. They brought in from all over Europe all the materials. You had all different things coming in. You had slate. You had actual wrought iron brought in from Scotland, glass from Italy and also France. And it is an absolutely stunning building. The interior, the wood is put together by hand. There is no nails, no glue. The interior is stunning to go through. There's the wood. You have here all the different composers. That is as if you were standing under the Eiffel Tower. So that is the roof. That curtain is the original curtain. And it is acoustically phenomenal. Now here, this is interesting. Now look at the area. Rio Negro, the Tannic water. The Amazon, the brown water. You couldn't wash clothes. So they were making enough money, they sent their clothes to Europe to be cleaned and sent it back. That's how much money was being made by rubber at that time. So what happens is the ships would come in, they would pick up the rubber, and then they would go and they would bring materials in from Europe. So the ballast basically was the things to build in this area. So here, this is a celebration of trade. The meeting of the waters, you'll find this all through the area. Tiles represent a lot of things in Brazil. This is the meeting of the waters. Here's the areas they did the trade with. And here is a beautiful area at night. Now the Mercado. Very interesting building. You might have heard of the gentleman who designed this. He built this tower in Paris. Eiffel. This was actually designed by Eiffel himself. And it is interesting. The one thing that's very interesting, no refrigeration. So first thing in the morning, 5 o'clock, the fish is expensive as anything. 2 in the afternoon, it's dirt cheap. And I'm not kidding on that. But you find here things from all different areas of the Amazon, herbs, foods you could imagine. The dried fish, and in here all the river fish. Once again, no refrigeration, so the price goes down as the day goes on. That's the acari. Here's your palm fruits. Now here, coming down the Amazon, many of these have been taken away. When they did the World Cup and the Olympics, what they did is they tore down some of the shanty towns. They now have new areas, but here's the shanty towns. Now the meeting of the waters, this is the Rio Negro with the Amazon. Now this is Lake January. This is only in the flood zone. When the water comes up, you go through this area. You come in by different boats. Now this is the water lily. If you raise it up, you can see he's got a sandal in his hand. There's spikes on the bottom. That's how it's not eaten by the fish. You'll find the way of life here, people coming out with their different animals. That's a zoom. I wasn't close. And then here, that's a nightclub. But you'll see the people doing their daily chores, living life. Beautiful water lilies, Lake January. Now I'm just going to go over man's impact very quick. You have the aspect of the making of cattle area. Now remember, it's red clay dirt. The soil is basically compost from the decay. There's no real heavy soil. Once you go down a couple inches, it's red clay. Doesn't grow anything. All the trees, there's no conifers or anything in the Amazon because all the tree roots go out. They can't go down. There's no nutrients there for them at all. So once you burn down the aspect, you have about a year. Then that can feed the area for the cattle. And then you got to go farther. Same thing with the soybeans, which is another big thing down below Santarem, the bottom. Then up on the very top left, you have the cutting down of the hardwoods. You also have the damming of the areas. So this is how it first starts. One road being built. So you have a road, then you start seeing all the connecting roads. And you can see that red clay there. There's nothing else but clay once it's cleared. Here's your area mining. The area up in the northern area, on the north, that way you're looking at northeast, is the mining gold, pumping in the water. Now remember, this is a piece of land that normally you would have maybe 3 people living within a couple square miles. Now you have hundreds of people in an area of that size. And you can see the shanty towns. Unfortunately, that's the one that does affect. So here, this is the burning, cutting down of the area. The only thing that gets taken from this is charcoal. So here's a patch you can see cut out. So you can see here the cattle. That's what basically the soil is after it's burnt. You can see it's not a heavy, rich area. It takes years to regenerate. Then here you have the soybeans, the same thing. This is Cargill, big controversy in Santarem. They promised thousands of jobs. They brought in about 30 jobs. And in here you have our areas that way being flooded. The damming areas, as I told you, 25% were dry savannas. These areas now are being affected. You can see here the dry savannas being flooded, killing the trees. And this is the raising of the hardwood. Now what happens is a lot of wood is taken with the hardwood. That way, the reason being to float the wood down the waters. So you have these jams, log jams coming down. They are trying to protect it. They're giving a price to people not to have their trees taken down. So they're trying very hard, but now they're also bringing in renewable source logging, where they're designating areas, fast growth trees. So they're trying to let people have the wood, but here you can see them pulling it down. So here, what's going on? The younger generation are very, very eco-minded. They want to protect the area. So you have many eco-resorts. The resort I stayed in Manaus, the Manaus Lodge, they had a generator. It ran 3 hours a day. That was to pump the water in and also to charge the batteries in everybody's room. You lived by car batteries. Your lights, you had silence. You had complete nature noise. And they really are doing more and more of this, trying to get people to really appreciate it. The one story I can tell you is that the gentleman who ran the lodge was our agent, and he turned around and he said, "Oh, I got to put the eggs out." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Oh, we got a monkey, a little pesky." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, he used to open the window, get in the kitchen, steal a couple eggs. So we nailed the window shut. Then he started breaking the window, started breaking everything else. So now we got to leave 2 eggs on the shelf." He comes down in the morning, takes his 2 eggs, and leaves. So he figured out how to blackmail him. Now, there's one other thing here. Very interesting. In Santarém, they're raising sable palm trees. They're making these big farms. And what they're doing is they're harvesting hearts of palm. But what they're also doing is taking all of the rest of the palm tree, shredding it. They're utilizing it for filling cushions, car seats. So they're coming up with ways of raising different things and farming that have many different uses. So they really are trying to protect the area. So I hope I gave you a little bit of insight. It is my favorite place. I love it. Now, in a couple days, I will talk about Devil's Island and the Dreyfus Affair. I had the pleasure of going on Devil's Island numerous times, actually been inside the prison, been with the area that Dreyfus was held. So I'll give you a little bit of background on that. Ladies and gentlemen, may God bless. Thank you. Have a great day.